Hi everyone, my name's Tim. This is going to be a book review of In the Shadow of the Wolf Queen by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. This book came out like 2 weeks ago. I finished it earlier this week, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. So let me just read the blurb. In the lakes, the Wolf Queen sharpens her spear. In the mountains, the ancient girl opens an eye. In the forest, an orphan is summoned by the trees. Our story has begun. So, this is the first in the Geomancer trilogy. Um, and I don't know when the next two are coming out, but I honestly can't wait. This is just incredible. First of all, this edition is printed by Orion Books, and my wife got it in Waterstones. This is a signed exclusive edition. I think I've got all of her books signed. There we go. She is a friend. She's a close friend. Funny, we've got a funny story where she about turning up at weddings, which I'll tell another day. Um, and I have an emotional connection to this book because I have an emotional connection to the author. Um, but this is the best book I've read this year. I think I can say, and I can say that objectively and subjectively. So, first of all, this edition is gorgeous. I don't know, Kieran has some magic with publishers because whenever they publish an edition of her book, it is always beautiful. So this has got a really nice, shiny, glary cover. But if I take off the dust jacket and put that to the side, we get this beautiful book. So you see the trees, and they're in the shape of a wolf, and then there's a girl riding a wolf on the back as the wind blows. We get a map of her fictional world, which, if you live in the UK, I think is pretty obvious what's the basis is. But all of the places have got different names. You've just got green stars on the back pages, and then every chapter, any blank pages there with trees, and then every chapter has got a picture of a wolf. And it's just beautiful. The silver foiling's really nice. It's like a cloth bound. This edition also has, once you finish the story, it has a chapter on how Isolde, the main character, found Nara, her sea hawk, which is a nice little thing. And then it actually has the first chapter of the next book, which doesn't have a name. It doesn't say, it just says the first chapter of book one, which was just makes me want to read it right now. Yeah. So, in terms of the order of how I'm going to talk about things, I'm just going to kind of go through. I've got things may randomly pop in my head, but the first thing I want to talk about is the world building, because this is a fantasy. This is a children's fantasy book, and as you can see, the world is very similar to our own in Britain, but there are so many things that make perfect sense and are magical, that I really, really like, both from a nature perspective but also from a humanity point of view. So in this, the Wolf Queen has invaded part of, I'm going to call it Britain, and what she does is she has invaded several lands before, and she picks and chooses bits of those cultures and brings them into her own culture and ethos and religion, such as she she changes her name when she reaches these lands to a name that is native from here. So she calls herself Seren, which I think is a Welsh name, and that's just a way of ingratiating herself into the culture. And you see, throughout the book, as Isolde, the main character, does go with the Wolf Queen. I think that's not a big spoiler, calling it In the Shadow of the Wolf Queen. You see how she picks and chooses her favorite things from these regions, and kind of makes her religion, her culture, a mishmash of things, which is what invaders do in real life. That's why in Britain everybody drinks tea, even though we can't even grow it here. That's why we love eating curry. That's why, we just pick invading nations, pick and choose from what they like, and kind of embed it into their culture. Um, so the other part of so that's the human side of kind of world building that was kind of brought to the front in this book, and I really enjoyed. I loved the nature side on this. So Isolde has no magic powers. She has a hawk that she has trained from a chick, a relatively young chick, but that she doesn't have. She has the innate bond of a human to an animal that they care for, but it's not a magic bond. She can't see through her eyes or read her thoughts or anything like that. Her sister, Hari, however, does have a magic power and is special. Special with a capital S. Uh, in that she can listen to trees. So she can hear what trees are saying. And that means that she can hear what's going on in the forest. She can help find people who are lost in the forest because she can talk to the trees and say, hey, there's this kid missing. Can you find them? Can you help me? But also, it shows the negative side of that in that they have to burn in their stone house. Everyone else lives in wooden houses. They live in a stone house, and they have to burn peat because they can't burn wood because Hari can hear the trees screaming. So that's kind of brings that side of it as well. And as where Isolde lives in her little town, village, whatever, everyone is very in tune with nature because here the trees are alive. They are almost sentient creatures. Nature is alive. This book is about nature and how humans overuse it, they burden it, and how humans have incredibly strong reactionary tendencies to things happening in the natural world and completely swing the other way. And I don't know. I think if you wanted to learn how to be a druid, read this book because it's so about nature and in tune with nature, and it's its own character in the book. Yeah. So the in the magic, the Wolf Queen is trying to get these people with powers, um, listeners who listen to trees, people who can find water, dowsers. It's all kind of nature based. Um, there's no like, oh, I'm the chosen one, so I can do magic and I can do whatever the plot needs me to do. That doesn't happen. It's not really the magic exists, but it's not world breaking. The Wolf Queen doesn't have magic. Isolde doesn't have magic. So it's kind of it's yeah. So none of the main characters have magic, but they're all special people. Um, so you see, this is based on the UK, but everything's just changed slightly. Everything's the language is a bit different. You've got obviously Scottish Celtic people, but they're not quite that. They're slightly different. You've got the Wolf Queen, who I think is probably from kind of Russia area, but again, slightly different. She has these giant sea wolves, which are like as big as horses. Wolves as big as horses, which is just so cool. It's just so cool. What it reminded me of is a bit of Lyra's world in his Dark Materials, from another Oxford native, Philip Pullman. In that it's our world, but the names are different, and it's like everything's just tweaked slightly, which I really enjoyed. I loved being in this world. I loved how Isolde, as the main character, has a very small view of the world. I love, and then her view grows as I think in the first chapter or the second chapter or something, she sees someone draw a map that we see in the book. She sees someone draw a map of the country, and she's like, well, she's never even seen a map before because she just lives in this tiny little village in the middle of the forest, and that's her world. She doesn't need to go anywhere else. She doesn't need to know anything else. I love how maps are very tricky because every little community has their own name for the thing. So like a giant tree, one village calls it this while another village calls it that, because they've grown up in isolation and their language has been a bit different, and they just call it that's what everything has different names rather than we've just decided that this bridge is called this, for example. I love that. Um, so now moving on to the characters. Isolde is the main character. Um, she's she meets a girl quite early on who is very mysterious, and you kind of know very little about her, but you see that Isolde has very good people skills in the way and is able to read her and trying to gauge what she is. And then you meet the Wolf Queen. The Wolf Queen is awesome and harsh, but fair and strong. You can see that she's a conqueror, but she's not a monster. Um, and actually, that's we generally keep with quite a small group of characters, which is quite rare for fantasy, and we get to know them really well. And I love that Isolde is good at reading people, and she's good at coming up with ideas to keep herself alive. The truth is a malleable object for her, which I always like that because you have the inherent that if you have the character who gets in on a lie, you have that inherent tension in the book of oh, not only what's going to happen, but like this lie is this lie going to get found out, or what happens when it does. And that you just have that inherent bit of nerve in everything that happens. And as what happens, you get wolves, you get Nara. The Seahawk is a prominent character, and really enjoyable. The character's just brilliant, and the plot. I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but the characters have goals, and they do what they can to get there. Sometimes the goals align, and sometimes they don't. There is an antagonist that appears later in the book, an antagonistic force, let's say. It's not. I wouldn't say it's super strong, but it's not about that because they're not really an antagonist towards Isolde. They're more to Seren, the Wolf Queen. So it does. It causes tension, and it causes the finale of the book. But yeah, I could say Isolde does pick up on the tension between the Wolf Queen and who this person is. But yeah, the main thing, a strong force for good, but also an antagonistic force is nature itself, because nature is in imbalance. Yeah, I think Isolde is a young protagonist. It's a children's book, so it's good to have a young protagonist. But she doesn't stand out for being by far the youngest. I think she's quite old beyond her years, having lived a very self-resourceful life. But also, she's not magic. Oh, I can arm wrestle a bear because I'm the main character. She is treated like a child by the adults, but she is fairly independent as well, and she does drive the story, which is good to read. Um, Again, Kieran's prose. I think she was a poet when she first started, and her prose is always beautiful and textured and evocative. And I think the fact that when she's writing about nature, that really comes through. You see how vivid the natural world is. You see everything through Isolde's eyes. Um, it's in third person, but I don't think that distanced the narrative at all. Um, yeah, and I must admit, I was reading this at work, and I almost didn't go back to work because I wanted to finish it, and I think I read it in about 2-3 days. And it's not the biggest book, but I was just even when I wasn't reading it, I was just thinking about it all the time. I can't wait for the second book. I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to see as the world continues to grow with these characters. I can't wait to see how we see what happens to characters who are out of Isolde's vision. Um, oh, this book is so good. It's a 5 stars, and um, I think everyone should try and find this in the shops. Um, Even like my wife, who doesn't read anymore, uh, because she got burnt by the Amber Spyglass. I don't think she's really read anything since. I've been like, you need to read this book. You need to read this book. I've told her like a dozen times to read this book. Um, See if she does. I might do an update. But that's what it looks like in the shop. In all good bookshops, certainly in the UK. I don't know when it's coming to the States or other places, but the start of a new fantasy trilogy packed with thrilling adventure and powerful magic. Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. Oh, it's just so good. It's just so good. Go buy this. Go read this. This is my book of the year so far. 5 stars. Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye.